Hey guys, this is Ron. So in the last video we covered integers, we covered floats, variables, we even did some mathematical operations using those values. And then we even converted them between binary, hexadecimal, and decimal. Well, now I'd like to pick up with making logical comparisons. So maybe we won't necessarily need to do mathematical operations on variables, but we need to know, are they equal? Are they not equal? Is one value greater than the other? And then depending upon that, there might be some operation that we want to perform. So I'm here in idle, and I'll set A equal to 5. I'll set B equal to 6. And then I want to test to see if they're equal. So notice here, instead of doing a single equal sign, which is an assignment operation, now I'm going to do a double equal sign. This is the comparison operation. And here I get a result of false. So A is in fact not equal to 6. A is not equal to B. So it doesn't matter if I use a variable on one side or a value on the other side. Python is still going to fill it in and do the comparison. What if instead of checking to see if they're equal, I want to check to see if they're not equal to? So I can do it A not equal to B. And I get true because in fact A is not equal to B. What if I want to test to see if A is less than B? So A less than B, A greater than B. So that looks like it works pretty good. There's another way of comparison that says, well, I want to know if they're either less than or they're equal to. So I can do A less than or equal to B. So I get a true. I can do an A is greater than or equal to B, and I get false. So that lines up pretty much with what we saw before. But what happens if I actually make them equal? So here I'm assigning the value in B to A. So A is 6 and B is 6. And so let's test again. A is less than B. I get a false. Why? Because they're equal. So I can do an A is less than or equal to B. All right. Is A greater than B? False. But is A greater than or equal to B? And I get true. All right. So those are the main kind of comparisons that you'll typically see. But I also want to kind of show you that it doesn't matter if you're comparing an integer or a float. So we had A was equal to 6. We'll set B equal to 6.0. So now B is a float. All right. Is A equal to B? True. So the comparison operator here doesn't care whether or not you have an integer on one side and a float on the other. It's going to make the comparison and it's going to come up with the value. So A is in fact equal to B regardless that B is a float and A is an integer. Now there's a value, or not necessarily a value, but a data type we haven't covered yet because there's a lot more involved than there was with integers and floats. And that data type is a string. So if I create a variable called C and I assign it the character of 5, well, we'll make it 6 so it actually looks like the other ones. So I've got A is 6, B is 6.0, and C is 6, but not a digit, but a character. So we can do a comparison. Is A equal to C? False, because C is well, it looks like it's the value of 6. It's actually the character of 6, and so it actually has a completely different value altogether. All right, so I just wanted you to kind of see that even though we might have what looks to be a 6 in C, it's in fact not a 6, and so Python treats them as being different, and so we need to take that into consideration when we're writing our programs. So now what can we do with this information? Well, we can basically build a statement that says, well, if this value or this logical operation results in a true, I want you to do this. Okay? And then if it doesn't come up with a true, I want you to do this other thing. So let's see what that looks like. So if I do an if statement, and let's do some type of operation. So I want to see, is A equal to B? Now with an if statement in Python, you need to follow up the line with a colon. If you leave that out, you're going to have issues. Now notice when I hit enter, I drop to triple periods right here. And this is basically an idle kind of thing where it's telling you that you're in some type of block. And so indentation is going to be expected. Now in a previous video we talked about the standard for Python is 4 spaces, and that you should always do 4 spaces because then your code is more likely to be compatible with other people's code. Since we're in idle and I'm not taking this code and I'm going to use it outside of idle, I don't necessarily have to follow that that kind of rule or that standard. I can merely just hit a tab because it's easier within the idle environment, and I'm not going to run into any issues. But as you're writing in a text editor, you'll want to make sure you're using spaces, or at least that your editor is set to use spaces instead of tabs. Okay, so if A is equal to B, what should we do? Well, let's print. Notice I have an opening bracket, I have a quotation, or an opening quotation. A is equal to B. I have a closing quotation and a closing bracket. And then I can hit enter a second time, and it will run that if statement. So A equals B is in fact is going to come back to a true, and because this logical operation resulted in true, it ran this statement. So if I were to set A equal to 4, now I'm just going to hit the up arrow key so I can go back. If A is equal to B, print A is equal to B. And notice I don't get anything in return. And that's because this evaluated to false, so this was never run. Well, what happens if I want something else to happen if this turns out to be false? Well, that's too easy. I'll go back, I hit my up arrows. So if A is equal to B, print A is equal to B. Else, I have to hit my tab again, print A is not equal to B. And there you go. So this resulted in false. So this was never executed. The next line says else. So there's no other comparison here. It says if all else fails, do this. All right. So let's see here. If A is greater than B, print A is greater than B. If, so here we're doing an else, but we're tagging another comparison on here. If, so this is else if A is less than B, print A is less than B. Oops. And if all else fails, print A is equal to B. Now this won't be true in all scenarios, but for what we're doing here, it looks pretty good. So I'll hit enter again, and here we get A is less than B. So what happened? So this resulted in a false. So this was never executed. It made the second comparison. If A is less than B, print this. Now notice that the else never gets executed either. In an if statement, only one of these is ever going to get executed. And it's going to be the first one that evaluates to true. So this was a false, this was a true, so this was executed, and nothing else after it was executed. All right. So we've got A is equal to 4, B is equal to 6. So let's set A equal to B. And let's run this thing again. If A is less than B, print A, or correction, if A is greater than B, print A is greater than B. If A is less than B, let's keep going up till we get to the correct one here. A is less than B. Probably would have been faster for me to type it. Else A is equal to B. And there we go. So this evaluated to false. This evaluated to false. So the only thing left was this else statement. When all else fails, do this. All right, so there you go. We learned how to see if two values were equal. We learned to see if one is less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and even if they're not equal to. All right. We then did our if statement. We did our elif statement. And we even did an else statement. All right. So that concludes our comparison operations. So I hope you got something out of that. And I look forward to digging in a little bit further. Thank you.